Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, South Korean engineers cross the border into North Korea to prepare for scheduled reunions this month of family members separated since the Korean War. This despite Pyongyang's threat that the event could be called off if Seoul and Washington press ahead with their military drills. Handing a victory to Korea in its spat with Japan over how to call the sea separating the two countries, the legislature of the U.S. state of Virginia passes a bill to have school textbooks use the Korean name as well as the Japanese name. Plus, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics officially kick off later this Friday with an unprecedented level of security in the face of terrorist threats. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Preparations for the upcoming family reunions for those separated since the Korean War are underway, with a team of South Korean engineers departing for the reunion site this morning.
But it looks like there may be some hiccups before the reunion event, currently slated for the third week of February. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
With less than 2 weeks left until the reunions for families separated since the Korean War, 64 South Korean officials crossed the border on Friday morning to check the facilities at the reunion site in the north. The engineers will make sure that the electricity and communication lines at the Mount Kumgang resort are up and running well in time for the reunions. Late Thursday night, the two Koreas confirmed that 85 South Koreans and 95 North Koreans will take part in the event. South Korea's Unification Ministry explained that some family members selected last year are unable to make the trip this time, as they have passed away or have fallen sick. Millions of Koreans were separated from their families during the Korean War more than 6 decades ago. Around 70,000 South Koreans, most of whom are now in their 80s, are on a waiting list to see their loved ones one last time. But will the reunions take place from February 20th to the 25th as planned? Just a day after the Koreas agreed to resume the reunions, North Korea called on the South to halt an upcoming annual military drill with the United States and threatened to reconsider the agreement. The reunion dates coincide with Seoul and Washington's Key Resolve exercises, which begin in the last week of February every year. South Korea said that the annual military exercises are purely defensive in nature and reiterated that it would deal with the North's objections to the drills separately from the family reunions. North Korea has a history of pulling the plug on such meetings in the past. Just last September, Pyongyang canceled a round of family reunions just 4 days before the event, disappointing hundreds of people on both sides of the border. If held, it would have been the first reunion event since 2010. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
The family of Kenneth Bae, the Korean-American who has been detained in North Korea for over a year now, may feel a little more comfort after U.S. President Barack Obama, for the first time, has made a public call for his release. Shin Se-min has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama offered a prayer Thursday for the quick and safe release of detained Korean-American Kenneth Bae. Speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast, an annual gathering of lawmakers and numerous faith leaders, Obama said Bae, a Christian missionary sentenced to 15 years of hard labor in North Korea, should be set free, and the U.S. will do everything it can to help him.
His family wants him home, and the United States will continue to do everything in our power to secure his release because Kenneth Bae deserves to be free.
Washington has already offered to send a special envoy to North Korea to secure Bae's release, but Pyongyang hasn't mustered up a response. It was the first time Obama has mentioned Kenneth Bae, and a strong sign the State Department is taking the matter seriously. Bae was arrested in North Korea in November 2012 when he was working in the country as a tourist guide. The North charged him with crimes against the state and attempting to overthrow the regime. At the gathering, Obama also said China should do more to recognize the freedom of religion, calling it essential to the country's national security.
When I meet with Chinese leaders, and we do a lot of business with the Chinese, but I stress that realizing China's potential rests on upholding universal rights, including for Christians and Tibetan Buddhists and Uyghur Muslims.
Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Recent satellite images indicate North Korea is nearly done upgrading its main rocket launch pad and could complete completion by next month or April. Setting an image on its website 38 North, the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University says an 11th level has been added to the launch pad in Dongchang-ni at the northwest coast Seohae launch site. The modification would allow a long-range rocket of up to 50 meters in length to be accommodated, which is larger than the 30-meter Unha-3 rocket that was launched by the North in 2012. The institute said the Unha-9, a slightly larger model, could be launched once construction is done, but that it will take the North years to build much bigger rockets. South Korea's security-related ministries on Thursday briefed President Park Geun-hye about their efforts on coordinating foreign and North Korea policies. Our Yoo-Yan reports on the government's planned projects with the North that include a peace park on the heavily fortified border.
Seoul will aim to strike a deal with Pyongyang sometime this year on building a peace park in the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. The Unification Ministry made the announcement on Thursday as part of its key policy plans for the year during a joint policy briefing session with President Park Geun-hye. The plan, first proposed by President Park last year, aims to create a peace park marked in yellow in the 4-kilometer-wide buffer border zone. The project was proposed with an aim of improving relations with North Korea. The Ministry for Inter-Korean Affairs also announced plans to push forth a so-called Eurasia Initiative that called for linking energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. The ministry said it will explore measures to renovate a 54-kilometer track connecting North Korea's port city of Najin and Russia's eastern border town of Hasan. Through the project, Seoul wants to ultimately build a distribution channel that runs from South Korea's southernmost port city of Busan through North Korea and to Russia. Moves for the project have been underway since November, when President Park met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and signed a memorandum of understanding that will help South Korean companies take part in the railway revitalization project. The Unification Ministry also announced it will look into businesses that could enhance cultural understanding between the two Koreas by working in various areas, including sports and arts. The ministry emphasized, however, that it will also dedicate equal efforts to denuclearizing North Korea while trying to improve relations with its northern neighbor. Yoo-Yan, Arirang News.
The lower house, in the U.S. state of Virginia has passed a bill requiring new school textbooks in the state to use both the Korean name, EC, and the Japanese name, Sea of Japan, for the body of water between the two countries. The state's governor's signature is now all that stands between it becoming law. Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
Starting from the next school year, students in the U.S. state of Virginia will very likely learn that the body of water between Korea and Japan is known not only by the Japanese name Sea of Japan, but also by the Korean name East Sea. The Virginia House of Delegates passed a bill by a wide margin of 81-15 on Thursday, requiring the state education board only approve textbooks that use both names. The State House and the Senate, which approved a similar bill late last month, will send a joint bill to Governor Terry McAuliffe for him to sign it into law. During his election campaign last year, the governor spoke in favor of the Korean view and has indicated he will sign on the dotted line. The bill results in a seemingly minor change in school texts, but the Korean government and the large Korean American community in Virginia are hailing the revision as they consider the Japanese name to be a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past. Japan had threatened to suspend investment in Virginia if the state legislature approves the bill. This is the first time for such a bill to be passed by a state legislature in the United States. The bill also goes against the State Department's single-name policy of recognizing the Sea of Japan only, largely due to clarity purposes. Korea media are reporting that the passage of the bill will give a stronger voice to the Korean American society. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has inked a patent cross-licensing deal with Cisco Systems, a worldwide leader in networking, in a bid by both firms to minimize legal disputes and focus on innovation. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics has signed a 10-year patent cross-licensing deal with Cisco Systems. The deal comes days after similar agreements between Samsung and Google and another between Cisco and Google. The deals are expected to give the firms more room to innovate without worrying about legal disputes over intellectual property. Samsung went to court 38 times last year for patent disputes, and its legal battle with Apple that spans more than 10 countries is dragging into its third year. Samsung has one of the largest numbers of patents in the world with around 100,000, while Cisco has around 9,700 and Google 50,000. Local media outlets in Korea say Samsung's recent cross-licensing deal will give Samsung and Cisco time to prepare for the latest trend in the tech world, the Internet of Things, in which products ranging from cars to household goods are connected to the Internet or electronic devices. Cisco is one of the leading companies in the Internet of Things. John Chambers, Cisco's chairman and CEO, said last month during his keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show, the Internet of Everything will forever change our daily lives. For businesses, Chambers said it would be a $19 trillion opportunity. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Tension is rising between the United States and Russia over the intensifying political crisis in Ukraine. Washington is accusing Moscow of bugging a phone conversation about the Ukrainian crisis between two top U.S. officials. Our Connie Lee has more.
Washington's real stance on the political unrest in Ukraine may have been revealed in a late phone call between two top U.S. officials. During the conversation between Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, the two discussed how they could organize a new government in Ukraine with some of the country's opposition leaders. The U.S. says Russia is behind the leak.
Certainly we think this is a new low in Russian tradecraft in terms of publicizing, posting.
The conversation posted on YouTube also includes Nuland using a swear word in reference to the EU, in apparent frustration over Brussels' efforts in dealing with the turmoil in Ukraine. The U.S. does not deny the authenticity of the conversation, but says Nuland has apologized for making the comments.
She has been in contact with her EU counterparts and of course, has apologized.
This comes as Russia has warned the U.S. against interfering in Ukraine. Russian officials accuse the U.S. of helping the opposition and fueling the anti-government protests there. A close aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin said that if the U.S. does not stop interfering in Ukraine's internal affairs, then Moscow will have to step in. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
The opening ceremony for the Winter Games in Sochi is now just hours away, but the run-up to the Games has been somewhat tense, with boycotts on construction, security concerns, and Russia's controversial policy on homosexuality. As Sun Jung-in gives us a rundown on what's happening in the last hours before the Games.
The wait is finally over, and with or without controversy, the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics kick off on this Friday. Security has been elevated in the lead-up to the Games, with the U.S. placing temporary restrictions on all liquids from carry-on bags to non-stop flights to Russia. The ban comes a day after U.S. officials warned explosives could be smuggled on flights in toothpaste or cosmetic tubes by terrorists. Despite the ongoing security concerns, the Olympics organizers said a record 44 world dignitaries will be at the opening ceremony, triple the amount they attended the 2010 Vancouver Games. Those who will be in attendance include Chinese President Xi Jinping and Ukraine's embattled President Viktor Yanukovych. Many Western leaders have been put off by Russia's anti-gay laws and are skipping the games. Among those not attending the ceremony are U.S. President Barack Obama, French President François Hollande, and British Prime Minister David Cameron. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon will be there. He called for an open and equal games at a session of the International Olympics Committee on Thursday, saying everyone should join together to fight discrimination against lesbians, gays, or bisexual and transgender people. Meanwhile, Korea's Ministry of Science, together with the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, has unveiled high-resolution images taken by the country's Arirang 3 satellite of the Sochi Olympic venue. The pictures show the main stadiums and other sports facilities where the Winter Games will begin with the opening ceremony starting at 1:14 a.m. Saturday Korea time. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
The Pakistani government and a Taliban-nominated team have met formally for the first time as they aim to end a years-long insurgency in the South Asian country. Meeting in Islamabad Thursday, the government laid out its 5 conditions, including ending hostilities, and said the search for peace had begun. The Taliban-nominated team agreed to relay the government's views to the militant group's leadership in Pakistan's northwest. Taliban insurgents have been fighting to overturn the Pakistani government and establish strict Islamic rule since 2007. Thousands have been killed in Taliban attacks since then. The Italian Navy has rescued over 1,100 African migrants who were trying to cross the Mediterranean on inflatable boats. Patrol helicopters first spotted the rafts on Wednesday off the coast of Lampedusa Island, situated between Italy and Tunisia. There were around 100 women and children among the mostly male groups on 8 boats and a barge. Officials say all of them appear to be from sub-Saharan Africa. The Italian government says more than 2,000 migrants landed on Italy's shores in January, almost 10 times the number reported in the same month last year. And on Thursday, at least 7 migrants drowned while making their way to a Spanish enclave in North Africa. They were among a group of hundreds trying to enter the Spanish territory. Now, an interesting situation is unfolding at the social networking giant Twitter. Billions of dollars were wiped off Twitter's value on Thursday after the company reported a sharp slowdown in user growth. Shares dropped 24% to around $50 in after-hours trading after it reported its monthly active user count was 241 million. Now that's only up 9 million from the previous quarter. The company's shares peaked at almost $75 in December last year, when some analysts forecast Twitter could become as big as Facebook. Twitter's revenue was not a disappointment, however, coming in at $243 million, up 116% on year. Twitter reported a net loss of over $500 million.
When Typhoon Haiyan devastated the Philippines last year, killing more than 6,000 people and leaving millions more displaced, the Korean government wasted no time lending a helping hand. Hundreds of engineers and military personnel from Korea were dispatched to the hardest-hit areas, and their mission continues to this day. Kim Hyun-bin filed this report from Tacloban.
The Philippines were slammed by one of the deadliest storms in recent history, Typhoon Haiyan, in November of last year. The storm destroyed practically everything in its path and killed thousands of people. 3 months have passed since that terrible day, but ships remain eerily abandoned on land, and thousands of homes that once made a thriving community sit empty and uninhabitable. But as the saying goes, through darkness comes light, and through fear comes hope. And a military unit from Korea is working day and night to help this region and its residents get back to something approaching normality. Scores of Korean military engineers and medics are based here in Tacloban, a city decimated by Haiyan, under the mission code name Operation Raw Angels. Their goal is to rebuild basic infrastructure, no easy task in an area akin to a post-apocalyptic nightmare. The Raw unit was sent to help people in desperate need, but also to repay an old debt.
We came here to pay back for the sacrifices made by the Philippine troops that fought and shed blood for our freedom during the Korean War.
Despite the sheer scale of the task ahead, it's unfortunate that this team are the only foreign troops lending a hand in the area at this time.
Many forces came for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then left. But the commitment of the government of the Republic of Korea for 1 year is really unprecedented, and everybody in the world is going to look towards this involvement as a model case for the future.
From schools to hospitals, Korean and Filipino engineers are working in sync, and it seems there is nothing they can't fix. But these are just the first steps. The people of the city have expressed high hopes about what this unit can achieve over the duration of their assignment here. This newly rebuilt elementary school was the work of the Arirang unit. By the year's end, the unit plans to build 50 schools in this area. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Pelosa.
The New York Philharmonic Orchestra is launching its 2-week tour of Asia with 2 concerts here in Seoul. Its first appearance in Korea in 5 years. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won got a sneak peek of the concerts at a recent rehearsal.
It's the oldest symphony orchestra in the United States and one of the oldest in the world. And this year, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra is kicking off a 2-week tour of Asia in Seoul. The orchestra has 2 concerts in Korea with a diverse repertoire that includes 18th and 19th century masterpieces by Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and music by American composers like Gershwin and Bernstein. This is the orchestra's 11th visit to Korea since its first in 1978, and the second under its current music director Alan Gilbert, the first native New Yorker to hold the post since 2009. Gilbert said he enjoyed the last visit to Seoul as he felt a strong musical connection with Korean audiences.
What I've felt here when I've played concerts in the past is this kind of energetic concentration, which is really what you look for. It's just a culture that obviously values music very, very much, and you can sense that when you're here, and as musicians, we love that.
25-year-old rising Korean pianist Da Sol made his New York Philharmonic debut with Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 3.
For soloists like myself, it is such an opportunity to perform with such a great orchestra, and I'm very aware that it's an opportunity that doesn't come to everyone. I'm very honored and thankful to everyone who helped me to be here.
The orchestra will continue its Asian tour with concerts in 4 cities in Japan, including Tokyo and Osaka. The tour wraps up in Taipei, Taiwan on the 19th. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And time now to get an update on the weather with our Lee Ji-yeon at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-yeon.
Great afternoon, Mark and Yusun. Well, winter sports fan must be very excited with the Sochi Winter Olympics kicking off today, huh?
That's right, yes. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. I'm not a huge winter sports fan, but I do like the Olympics. And the weather, I suppose, is fairly important. So you being the expert on the weather, what's the weather going to be like in Sochi on opening ceremony day?
Well, it will be sunny in Sochi today with a high of 9 degrees Celsius. And I'll be sure to give you updates on the weather in Sochi throughout the Olympics. Well, here in Seoul, we should also have mild weather with a high of 7 degrees Celsius. But regions down south will have afternoon highs hovering below 10. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do has been receiving a heavy snow, and up to 60 centimeters of snow are expected to fall through Sunday. And there's a heavy snow advisory in effect for the Gangwon-do area, so please be aware of that if you're going to be in those regions this weekend. Now, other areas including Seoul will also receive a mix of snow and rain starting tonight, and that should continue until tomorrow morning. And it looks like it will bring down the temperatures in most regions throughout the weekend, and we will have another round of snow again on Sunday morning for most parts of the country. So please keep that in mind. And here here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 7. Daegu and Gwangju will see a high of 6 and 9 respectively, while Busan should top out at 8 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will climb up to 9 and Daejeon will rise to 8, while Mount Kumgang will only get up to -6. Now that's all for me this week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather there, Jian, and those are the stories we're following on this Friday lunchtime.
And we'll be back here next Monday for Newsline at Noon. Join us then.